debate. The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Always a pleasure to rise in this chamber, representing my department, but also the people of Parry Sound Muskoka, as our anniversary just came up, or for some of us anyway. I'm currently in my 10th year of representation at this point. So, well, 9 years means you're in your 10th year. That's how it works. I'm just trying to get the age and longevity figured out there, but thank you very much. I do want to thank the people of Parry Sound Muskoka for their confidence in me, but I do want to talk about this legislation as well. It is one of the first of its kind in the world, and it will enshrine into law a rule that has been in place since April of 2012 administratively in this government, and it goes to our pledge to the people of Canada to continue to find ways to create new jobs and growth and rebuild our economy, create new opportunity. And one of the ways that we do that is by supporting small businesses in our communities and promote small business growth throughout the country. Notre plan visant
Our plan to reduce the administrative burden will achieve those objectives.
Quite simply, when a new regulation that imposes an administrative burden is introduced, the law would require that another one be repealed. Specifically, what we do is, I think, unprecedented in these kinds of operations around the world. We monetize the value of the administrative burden, and then we declare that that monetary value be offset by other regulatory changes. This, I believe, enhances transparency and accountability, and we further do so through an annual report reporting on the implementation. Now, what the bill won't do, this is very important, it will not compromise public health or public safety or the efficient operation of the Canadian economy. Le projet de loi
The bill will not compromise public health, public safety, or the Canadian economy.
Some may ask, why does reducing red tape matter? Well, red tape gets in the way of jobs, of growth, and of improving Canadians' lives. Complying with the information obligation of 12 of the most common federal, provincial, and municipal regulations in 5 sectors of the economy works out to a total cost to our small businesses of $1.1 billion per year. On average, the annual time per establishment, small business establishment, to comply with legislative tax requirements was 15 hours at an annual cost to these small businesses of $1,724. This, Mr. Speaker, is a hidden tax that hits the little guy or gal hardest. So it was 4 years ago now that we launched the Red Tape Reduction Commission. We asked how red tape was killing jobs and asked for recommendations on how to fix these problems. Now, this commission, Mr. Speaker, went coast to coast. We had 15 roundtables, 13 cities, and over 200 participants, along with online consultations and a dedicated website. What we heard was Canadians needed one for one, and they needed what became known as the Red Tape Reduction Action Plan.
We introduced this regulation as a pilot project in April 2012, and the result is a reduction in the burden by some $24 million and a net reduction of 20 regulations.
I want to give you some examples. We changed the Corporate Returns Act to collect financial and ownership information on corporations doing business in Canada. Now only corporations with revenues of more than $200 million or assets of over $600 million or foreign debt and equity over $1 million will have to report financial and ownership information. 32,000 businesses will no longer be required to file this complex government return. This one change saves our small businesses $1.2 million per year, Mr. Speaker. Monsieur le Président. Une autre exemple peut-être.
Mr. Speaker, another example. Health Canada has reduced the administrative burden by modifying their regulations to allow technicians at regulated pharmacies to supervise the transfer of prescriptions from one pharmacy to another, a task that was limited to pharmacists in the past. This allows pharmacists to spend more time offering advice and serving clients while supporting their business. This initiative has reduced an administrative burden of $15 million per year.
For Northwest Territories and Nunavut mining regulations, we have simplified the licensing, we have encouraged holders of mineral claims towards development, and we have modernized the tenure system in this regard, and this has saved over $600,000. So examples of success like these are going to save almost, get this, Mr. Speaker, 100,000 hours per year wading through red tape. Now, I should mention that, of course, I'm here as President of the Treasury Board, Mr. Speaker, and it is Treasury Board that, in fact, enforces this rule, and we have indeed ensured compliance. So what are the next steps?
It's time to take this pilot project and put it into act.
Pilot project and make it a law. And we committed to this, I should add, in our speech to the throne, and that's why this bill is here in this House. So what is the message that we're saying by supporting this bill? What are we saying about Canada? Well, we're saying that Canada is open for business. We're saying that we're on the side of job creators. And we're saying that government is committed to protecting Canadian businesses, employees, and, of course, growing the economy. I might want to read into the record, if I might, some commentary on this bill, Mr. Speaker, starting with Laura Jones, who's the Vice President of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. She says, and I quote, "The federal government is showing tremendous leadership in implementing its ambitious red tape reforms. Wrestling with reducing red tape requires the stick-to-itiveness and political leadership that we are seeing from Ottawa. It's heartening that the messages that we are getting from the Prime Minister, from me, she mentions, and our colleagues, that they are in this for the long haul." Then there's Kevin Dancy, President and CEO of the Chartered Professional Accountants of Canada. He said, "We applaud the federal government's early accomplishments in reducing red tape barriers faced by Canadian entrepreneurs and business owners. The government's reiterated commitment to a sustained approach over the long term is encouraging. A persistent approach is the remedy required to identify and develop solutions to effectively reduce the compliance burdens and associated costs faced by the Canadian business community." That's Kevin Dancy. Then we've got Helen Long, President of the Canadian Health Food Association. Helen says, "The government's focus on the reduction of red tape has already made an important impact on our and many other industries. CHFA, that's the Canadian Health Food Association, and its members stand ready to support the government in its efforts to further reduce the red tape burden on Canadian business and to allow them to focus on innovation and job creation instead of administration." And finally, Carole Prassot, Regulatory Affairs, CGA Canada, says, "These messages should give Canada's small and medium businesses more time to focus on growth, innovation, and job creation." That's exactly the point, Mr. Speaker. We want our small businesses to focus on growth, on jobs, on innovation in our economy. I want to talk very briefly about the small business lens. Introducing a small business lens to regulatory creation is part and parcel of this bill as well. Businesses that represent over 40% of Canada's private sector GDP and almost 50% of all jobs in the private sector, they have requested that when we look at regulations, we take the time to look at it from the point of view of the small business. How will the regulation or the proposed regulation affect them and their ability to operate, and their ability to innovate and create new jobs? And so we have this as part of our of part of our rules and our law as well. This will happen, this small business lens, when a regulatory change imposes over $1 million in annual nationwide costs and has an impact on at least one small business. That's the test, Mr. Speaker. And now, as a result of this, regulators will have to ask themselves, is the information we are asking these small businesses already being collected by another government department? As a former small business owner myself, Mr. Speaker, nothing drives you crazier than filling out a form in triplicate from one level of government or one government department, and then the next day you get another form asking the same questions, Mr. Speaker. We heard that from small businesses. I remember it well when I operated my own small business, Mr. Speaker. And so we are demanding from regulators at Treasury Board, and we want this in the law, if it is passed by this House, what is already being collected by another government department so that we don't have to overburden our small business. Is there another way? Here's another question. Is there another way to regulate that is less burdensome, rather than automatically going to, well, we've got a problem. We hear this all the time in Ottawa, folks. We got a problem. We got to solve a problem. How are we going to solve the problem? And the constant advice we get, well, is if we only pass this regulation, we'll solve the problem. But maybe there's another way to solve a problem. Maybe there are other ways, if we use our noggins a little bit, that we can solve the problem without over-regulating our small businesses. And the third question is, are we communicating in plain language? And again, I hear this time and again from small businesses to try to understand what government is asking of them is sometimes very difficult, Mr. Speaker. And so we want to put the burden, if there's going to be a burden, let the burden be on the bureaucracy, let the burden be on the regulators to actually speak in plain language so people understand what they have to say. So this is part of a 20-point small business checklist, Mr. Speaker, that regulators have to fill out, they have to publish, has to be signed by the minister responsible as part of their package to Treasury Board before Treasury Board will consider whether this regulation is the right thing to do. And of course, this means greater transparency as well. Very briefly, Mr. Speaker, some other changes. Service standards for 24 high-volume regulatory authorizations have been created, covering more than 60,000 transactions with businesses each year. 32 departmental forward regulatory plans to let the small businesses know what's coming around the corner. They publish these forward plans, and so small business has either the time to adapt or the time to react and say to government, you know what, we understand what you're trying to do here. We agree that something has to be done, but maybe there's a better way to deal with it that doesn't involve always further regulating a small business. The annual scorecard, Mr. Speaker. J'ai publié les premières.
I published the first and second annual scorecard reports from our Red Tape Reduction Action Plan so that Canadians know how much progress we've made. This scorecard is validated independently by the Consultative Committee on Regulations.
Mr. Speaker, let me put it this way. Low taxes, less red tape, more growth, more prosperity, balanced budgets, safe streets and communities, and a belief that this is the best country in the world in which to live and in which to do business. That is our aspiration. That's our record, but we want to move forward as well. Thank you. Merci.